Right, hi everyone. Welcome back to another lecture. Hope you have enjoyed your inter-house games today. It's quite late at night, okay, right now, but it's okay. Okay, we'll still continue, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible because I know this week is pretty busy for most of you. Okay, excuse me. Before we begin with the content for today, I just wanted you to take note of a few things. Okay, first and foremost, the importance of these geographical knowledge. Okay, so continents, your global regions, as well as countries. Okay, it's kind of worrying that some of you are not so sure about these particular geographical features and also the differences. Okay, for example, Africa is not a country. Okay, Africa is a continent. Right, so why this is important is because you will be using examples from all over the world, from all sorts of different countries, different regions, right? And you need to be familiar at least with some of the names and also the rough location of some of these countries or regions or dependencies or whatever. Okay, so um, it is a good point, okay, good habit to note, to maybe think about or searching up maybe some information about this particular country that you might be quoting, okay, before you even use the example in your exams. Okay, so do familiarize yourself with this world map. It's not necessarily to for you to memorize it, okay, because you have Google Maps and everything, right? So you just need to be familiar. Oh, maybe roughly where in the world is this thing, or does this country even exist in the first place? Okay. Now into today's topic. Today we're talking about youth rights and crime. Okay, so we shouldn't take too long. Most of it is examples, so I can consolidate it quite fast. Right, so let's get straight into it. Now, when we talk about youth crime, okay, the main focus or the main cause of all the so-called youth crime is dependent on juvenile delinquency. Now, you have probably heard of this term before, at least these two terms separately. Juvenile meaning young people, delinquency meaning like if I call you a delinquent, it means that you are, not following the rules, okay, you're a bad kid and stuff like that. Okay, so this noun itself, okay, or noun phrase itself, is basically representative is that this young person is continuously and habitually, meaning it is almost second nature to this person, okay, to commit this crime, and it is below the age that we typically persecute for this type of crime. Okay, so generally speaking, peer pressure, lack of parental guidance, psychiatric illnesses, media exposure, blah 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 blah, and also insecurity all lead to juvenile delinquency. Okay, these are some examples of some of the factors. So it can be psychological, social, moral, everything is possible. Okay, and one thing that we'll take a look at later is parenting styles as well. Okay, so you can see these are just a very brief overview of the characteristic of juvenile delinquency. Okay, so the subject typically is of younger age, okay, with lower education level and a recurrence of crime. Mode of crime is likely motive is very simple, right? It's greediness, all right, and sometimes it is violent and ferocious as well. Okay, so this includes crimes like most commonly would be theft, okay, so shoplifting, vandalism, okay, so either like keying cars, spraying graffiti, stuff like that. Purchasing of restricted items, for example, your alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco products, etc., or vapes nowadays. Okay, these are all part of this juvenile delinquency idea. Okay, so what I want you to extend, okay, is to the idea of gender stereotypes. Now, you should have known, okay, about gender stereotypes so far, be it in your SS lessons or your CC lessons or your sexuality education lessons, okay, but I want you to think now, okay, if there is any link between gender stereotype and crime. Okay, so you think about it, what are the gender stereotypes that you know of? And do you think that there is any link between that and the committing of certain crimes in youth? Okay, so just pause the video if you need to. Okay, but think about this point. So in Singapore, by the way, just for your information, if you are below 16 and you're arrested or summoned, okay, you are usually charged in the youth court. Unless, of course, there is a very, very serious offense that is only heard by the high court, so stuff like murder, okay, or they are jointly charged with the adult offender. Okay, so generally speaking, youths, okay, specifically children, have a different set of justice proceedings, okay, as compared to full-grown adults. Okay, and the reasons why we'll explore later on. Now, back to what I was saying just now. Parenting style. Okay, so parenting style actually does affect the likelihood of juvenile delinquency. Okay, especially for today's youth. So you have your first type, which is generally speaking, we call it the neglectful type. Okay, so these are things that you're unable to achieve the basic functions of parenting. We discussed this in previous chapter, right? 1.1. There is a difficulty therefore to control the children because when they're already young, right, you refuse to learn anything about them. You refuse to do things like keeping tab on the schoolwork, who they are hanging out with, and stuff like that. You failed to achieve the basic function. Okay, and therefore this will give you difficulty in terms of controlling children in later years. And this of course will lead to this child having no support, okay, or no discipline instilled into them, and therefore it exacerbates the idea of rebellion. Okay, like I said, rebellion is not necessarily bad. All of us have that rebellious phase, okay, but the through threat of the parenting style issue comes when the rebellion eventually turns into delinquency. Okay, so rebellion and delinquency, okay, they are similar, but one is definitely more severe than the other. Okay, and neglectful parenting style, where the parent doesn't keep tabs on their children or don't care about their children at all, this is an issue. Now, conversely, you would think an authoritarian style of parenting should be better, right? Authoritarian, okay, is actually borrowed from governance, okay. Authoritarian is basically the top-down approach, right? Everything I want to control, okay, this controlling mindset. Actually, not so fun fact, okay, but just a fact, no, okay, it is wrong to assume that authoritarian style parenting will inculcate good children or give rise to good children and discipline. Actually, it's not true. Okay, any of you who have had this kind of parents, okay, or this type of parenting style growing up, you'll know. Okay, authoritarian style parenting often leads to greater rebellion, especially in teenagers. Okay, so it is the refusal to take the child's thoughts, opinions, or feelings into account when the parents are making certain decisions that cause them to want to go against their parents. Okay, and the more they feel that they are not being respected, okay, there will be no way for the teenager to, or child even, to respect the parents. Okay, it is not guaranteed. It is not, okay, it is expected to respect your parents, definitely, but biologically speaking, it's not. Right? There's no such thing. Respect is a social concept. Right? So this improper method of discipline will only exacerbate an already rebelling child, naturally, to become even more discontent and therefore lead eventually into greater possibility of delinquency. Okay, so it is very important that the parenting style needs to be all-rounded, not just focus on freedom, fully free or fully controlled by the parents, but somewhere in between. Okay, and this is something that you will see over and over again, especially in comprehension. Okay, so last week we learned about UNICEF, right? The United Nations Children Fund. According to them, more than 1 million children who are below 16 are currently incarcerated. I want you to learn this one. Incarcerated means currently in some kind of detention. Okay, usually it is prison or jail. Okay, but it can also be detention without trial, temporary rehabilitation centers or whatever. Okay, but more than 1 million children are currently incarcerated. Okay, so remember this document I showed you last week, right? The UN Convention on the Right of the Child. supposedly speaking, in the perfect world, those below 16 should only be detained for the shortest appropriate period of time and receive proportionate punishment. First one, I don't need to explain. Second one, what is proportionate punishment? There is a difference there should be a difference in the punishment for an adult offender as compared to a child offender. Right? Children all don't know this, don't know that. They're very immature. They're not exposed to the reality of the world. So the fact that they commit some mistakes, okay, should be taken into consideration when it comes to sentencing, and that is what the convention here is trying to say. So proportionate to their age, their youthful age. But, and here's where I will include a lot of examples, okay? Yet, in countries like Nigeria, Somalia, Brazil, the Philippines, whatever, okay, whichever one you want to think about or to research further, okay, children are also held for crimes that are not really crimes, especially in our mindset. Crimes like being late for school, not going to school, having abortion due to rape or incest. Okay, these are crimes that may not necessarily agree with our definition of crime here in Singapore or in the first world. Right, you'll notice that Nigeria, Somalia, Brazil, and the Philippines, a good proportion of it can actually be considered third world. Okay, so that's something for you to consider. What has the economic perspective got to do with this? Okay, so some of these children were actually tried as adult offenders. We already broke the second part of the UN Convention there. Okay, and they were sentenced to incarceration in adult prisons, which is bad. You realize prisons, right? What's the purpose? It is to serve rehabilitation. It's to get people to reflect on their mistakes, learn from it, and go out to be a better citizen. But if we're throwing children into jail or prison with hardened criminals, adult criminals, for simple things like not going to school, wouldn't that cause them to become more agitated, more radicalized in some cases, become more hardened criminals, right? The environment that you interact in will determine your character. Okay, so that is a problem, you realize, okay? But in these countries, this is the case. Okay, more examples. And no surprise here, the country with the most number of incarcerated children is, of course, the United States of America, land of the free and also of prisoners, right? America has the highest number of prisoners per capita, or should I say highest number of incarcerated citizens per capita. Okay, for children alone, at least 100,000 children currently are likely being held in US prison and migrant detention center. Okay, migrant detention center here refers to the basically the facilities, okay, set up by the customs agency okay, of the US to deal with the problem at the southern border with Mexico, okay, where there are a lot of migrants coming from South America, Latin America, and Mexico, okay, into wanting to go into the United States because of issues in those region. Okay, so at least 100,000. That is a lot of people. Okay, a lot of children. More examples. Thailand. Okay, Thailand's immigration law permit the indefinite detention of all refugees, including children. And this is bad. Okay, not only because it violates a whole bunch of conventions for the rights of refugees. Okay, by the way, refugees, if you don't know, refugees are people who are being displaced, okay, removed from their homes basically because of either economic issues, genocide, or political persecution. Okay, so basically these are the people that are not so favorably looked on by the controlling masters of their land that they used to live on. Okay, and therefore they have to leave. Okay, so these migrants included people like the Rohingya. Okay, Rohingya is a group, okay, a minority group in what we know today as Myanmar. Okay, and this is the group of people that have been on the news very, very, very recently across, I think at least the last 5 years, because they have faced great plight in Myanmar. Okay, the military, who by the way is currently in power in Myanmar, right, do not look at these Rohingya people as very favorably. Okay, they are in fact killing them. Okay, committing genocide. Okay, you can think about the term genocide. We'll not talk about this in this chapter. Okay, but what's happening to them now is that actually they are being persecuted, they're being killed. Okay, which is why the Rohingya have been escaping Myanmar. Okay, especially now with the junta government, to neighboring countries like Bangladesh, China, and of course Thailand. Okay, they took boats to Thailand and the rest of the Southeast Asian countries, and a lot of times they die on the route because of the large currents, the large waves in the sea, right? And their boats are really small, tiny wooden boats. Okay, I wouldn't even call it a boat, it's more like a floating raft of sorts. Okay, and yet Thailand's laws, okay, have in fact allowed for indefinite detention of people like the Rohingya or the Uyghurs in China, okay, who are native to Xinjiang region. Okay, you can read more about that. We won't go into that for this topic. Okay, also people like the Pakistanis, Somalis, etc., etc. Basically, anybody who is a refugee can be detained indefinitely. Children, they are, because of their small stature, they're kept in small, very cramped cells, and the food that they get is very terrible food. Okay, is barely any nutrition in there, and of course, in such condition, you wouldn't expect them to get any education. Okay, so it is true. This is from just a few weeks ago. Right, script says second Uyghur dies in Thai detention. So it is true. People are dying in Thai detention, and these are refugees, people who have already suffered enough in their old ancestral homes, and yet here they are. Very sad. Okay, more examples. In Afghanistan, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, just to name a few, a lot of children have also been incarcerated for things like extremism or terrorism. Okay, obviously we know in these countries, very sadly, a lot of extremist terrorists do exist in these countries, especially in countries like Syria, okay, where ISIS is still sort of there in the northern part of the country, or in Afghanistan right now as well. Okay, and children are often recruited to be a part of these terrorist organizations because why? They're young, they're agile, they're sharp. Okay, there is a saying, okay, that a bullet from a 40-year-old and an 8-year-old deal the same damage. Sometimes the 8-year-old deals more. Okay, so this is the mentality that some of these extremist groups have. Okay, and so a lot of children have actually been incarcerated for such things. Okay, and I think, as you know, this is SS content, right? Detention without trial. You have learned about America's Patriot Act. You have learned about Singapore's Internal Security Act. Okay, in these countries, those exist as well. And the problem with detention without trial, remember, is that there is limited check and balance. Nobody is there. Okay, they don't go through the judge, like the sitting in front of judge in the courtroom presenting evidence. No, what? Because of the nature of the issue of terrorism and a threat to national security, detention without trial laws allow governments to detain anybody, not arrest, detain people indefinitely until they are satisfied that the threat no longer exists. Okay, so this is the case here. Okay, so there's less check and balance, so it is more likely for things like torture, like neglect and abuse to happen under such conditions. Okay, and this is actually the case. Okay, this is from one of the human rights organization. Okay, talking about children unlawfully being detained in northeastern Syria, where ISIS is still quite prevalent. Okay, you can read this on your own. More examples. Oh no. Israel is the only country in the world to automatically prosecute children in military courts. They hold children in detention with enhanced interrogation. Okay, enhanced interrogation, by the way, is the so-called nice hearing. Okay, is so-called the nice term referred for torture, basically. Abuse, torture, choked, being beaten, threatened, interrogated. Yeah, that's all falling under enhanced interrogation. and they also persecute children without legal representation. And should be no surprise, it is Palestinian children who are at the who are victim of such things in Israel. Okay, if you don't know, Israel and Palestine have historically had bad ties, and they still continue today. There's still a large degree of not just political fighting, but also actual conflict. Okay, be it sometimes the use of missiles, even, or gunfire, or even persecution like this. Okay, so again, read more about it. We'll come back to it in future topics. Okay, so yeah, almost done, almost done. Huh? In countries like Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, okay, drug detention center. Okay, it's another one. It's similar to detention without parole, except it's not about terrorism. It's about cleaning up the streets, removing drugs from the streets. Okay, but the reality is, a lot of these centers, all right, they detain children, and in the name of rehabilitation or treatment, they beat them, they force them to do labor, and they torture them. Okay, in the name of treatment. And the sad thing is that some of these children do not even use drugs. They're just, being grouped with this entire group of children in the name of these cleansing operations, right? So the governments would just use, the operation, whoever is just so happen to be in that area, or even having even a slight suspicion, okay, of taking drugs or dealing drugs, they'll all be sent to this detention center to face this fate. Okay, so it's a very sad thing, right? Yeah, so this is again another research article, right, that is taken. So again, you don't, okay, for general wise, these are good enough. Okay, these topic sentences or whatever I given you is more than enough for your context. Okay, but if you truly want to understand the issue, okay, and I advise that you do, because it will help you structure your answers better, and it will help you to not become so perplexed during your essay writing, okay, because you need to, I cannot remember example, oh my goodness, so many names, so many terms, so many countries. Go and explore, go and learn on your own, go and find out the explanations for yourself. Okay, that is the very important thing that you need to do for yourself. Okay, and in Singapore, not to say we don't have these issues, okay, we have our own version, but in Singapore, we do have certain solutions as well. For example, with the changes, okay, to the Children and Young Persons Act, CYPA, this is an important piece of Singapore legislation. Okay, CYPA is essentially Singapore's legislation that deals with the protection of children and youth. Okay, so according to the CYPA, this thing, the ECPO, or the Enhanced Care and Protection Order, okay, is basically something like your restraining order. Some of you might have heard that term before in the US. Okay, but this is specifically to protect children and also other vulnerable groups. Okay, so they are preventing them from they are basically being taken care of by the Ministry of Social and Family Development. Okay, and basically counselors and social workers will ensure their safety, okay, and their safety and their growth, okay, especially in cases where parents or other caregivers may not be in a position to do so. Okay, and this is one of the examples of how we can protect children as well. Okay, actually that is all I have for this particular lecture slide. Okay, before we leave off, let me just introduce you a bit to the CIA World Factbook. Okay, I just wanted to show you directly, okay, what are some things that you can look out for in terms of the World Factbook. So this is the link here, okay, cia.gov/the World Factbook. Okay, and we're looking at this section of all countries. So this is of course by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. Okay, so the data is pretty absolute, I would say. Okay, let's just take a look at Afghanistan, for example. So you can see how recently they've updated it. Yeah, so you can see the background. Okay, this is the history of Afghanistan. Okay, so what happened? Okay, so you can talk about, you can see that, maybe they talk about the USSR's invasion in 1979, and they talk about, of course, the Taliban, okay, which is currently ruling Afghanistan right now. Okay, so you can see some more basic information. These are not so much important. Okay, um, yeah, not so much important. These geographical things is not so important. Ah, population distribution starting to become more important, and this is the part where it's quite important. Okay, people in society. So their population, you can see the religious structures. Okay, so why is Islamist fundamentalism so important in Afghanistan? The dependency ratio. Okay, so dependency ratio is actually basically, for example, if the elderly dependency ratio, it would be how many youths to how many elderly in the country, and population growth, birth rate, death rate, all these are very important, so that you know at least how well the country is growing socially as well. Urbanization, yes, also. Okay, so I'm just you can see, wow, there's a lot, really, really a lot. TFR, we talked about this before. Water. Okay, so for example, if we're arguing something about access to uh, resources, okay, example can be used here. Okay, but again, it's difficult to use statistics, so I suggest you don't. Just general idea will do. Okay, so things like malnutrition. Okay, talking about resources again. Okay, basic necessity. Child marriage, we will talk about in the next week. School life. Okay, so this you can use for the chapter on education as well. And youth unemployment. Okay, so this is a very general statistic. Maybe you can use this as a third world example, for example. Okay, and you can see, wow, there's a lot. For whatever topic you want, you want to talk about government. You can talk about theocratic government, which is what Afghanistan is. You can talk about authoritarian government. You can find all the information under this section here. Okay, legal system, whatever. Okay, economy, same thing, right? Real GDP, PPP, okay, also known as PPP. Okay, this is important. This will tell you the true metric of how well the country is doing economically. Okay, so you see not just real GDP, but also how much it is growing. Okay, and this is of course just the normal GDP. Same thing, unemployment, blah blah blah. You can take a look. Gini coefficient is for measure of inequality. Yeah. Okay, so you can take a look. The rest is not super important, but I think it's still worth noting, especially for this part, transnational issues. Okay, transnational issues is something that will be discussed further next year in J2. Okay, but I think it's still important for you to start understanding some of the global. Okay, why global issues exist? Because one of the key concept in your essay question, especially, is conflict and politics. Okay, so this will come in very handy for those particular essay types. Okay, yeah. So I think that's all for today. It's very tiring. It's very late already, I know, for most of you. Okay, so remember, continue building up your content knowledge. Okay, try your best. Okay, go and read more, especially for local affairs, current affairs, on news. Okay, not just for Singapore but also the entire world. And slowly, you'll get better and better. Okay, so all the best. Enjoy the rest of your week, and yeah, I will see you back in school. Okay, have a nice day, everyone. Bye bye. See you next week.